now please recognize Mr. McGovern for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the witnesses' time, and I've learned a few things during the testimony, but I don't have any questions for them directly. I want to express some frustration, not with you, but kind of with this Congress. I'm worried about where Congress is going, and I have to be frank. I think.
What's up, America First family? Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We're bringing you the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you, and your support helps us keep fighting for conservative values and putting America first.
I think this hearing smells like cover for what Republicans on this committee actually want to do about pesticide policy. It's not the kind of innovation and precision that some of our witnesses touched on. They're pursuing toxic substance deregulation and liability shields for multi-billion-dollar corporations. Look what's happening right now in the Interior Appropriations Committee. And they don't want some of their voters who care about pesticide reform to know that's what they're after. So we're having a hearing to make it look like we're all on the same page. Look, we use over 1 billion pounds of pesticides in this country every year. And look, I understand why that's important. I visit my local farms regularly, and we talk about the challenges that farmers face while protecting their crops. And I'm not interested in telling farmers how to do their job, but I am interested in protecting those farmers, their families, and their employees from clear and present danger. They need to know that the inputs they use aren't going to make them sick, and it's our job to set up a system that takes that burden off their plate. Fully 1/3 of pesticides used in the U.S. are banned in other countries, in Europe and Canada, and even China and others, because rigorous independent science has confirmed that they present an unacceptable risk to human health. And I've been working on reasonable pesticide reform for a long time. I think that's the direction that we ought to move in, but that's not where we're at. But I just want to say something else in terms of expressing my frustration. Mr. Chair, last Friday, my colleague from Massachusetts, Ayanna Presley, and I attended a listening session sponsored by an organization called Project Bread on SNAP with local and state government officials, leaders of nonprofits, but most importantly with people with lived experiences. Food insecurity and hunger is on the rise in this country, and people are really worried about the impact that this big, ugly bill that has just been signed into law is going to have on them. We ought to be doing a hearing on that right now, what the impacts of the big, ugly bill are going to be in terms of hiking up food insecurity and hunger in this country. People are struggling. They are working harder than ever and having difficulty putting food on the table. SNAP recipients are increasingly relying more on food pantries, on food banks, on faith-based organizations to make sure that their families have enough to eat. They made it clear that the benefit that currently exists, which is about $2 per person per meal, is not enough. And they expressed horror about what is coming as a result of the legislation that this Congress passed. I mean, state officials are worried about how they're going to deal with the added burden, hundreds of millions of dollars in additional responsibility to make sure people in their states don't go hungry. They don't know how they're going to do it. And we talked to grandmothers and single parents and workers who think that Washington doesn't care. Look, this committee is responsible for the cuts that are in reconciliation with regard to SNAP. And I have to be honest with you, we can't have business as usual. We can't make believe like there's no big deal, that everything's just going to work out, because it is not. And I've been reading about talk about a new farm bill and about how we're going to throw a few sweeteners here and there to try to see whether we can pass a farm bill. I don't know how we can move on a farm bill unless we fix reconciliation. And I, speaking for myself, do not want to be complicit in covering up a Republican strategy that will dramatically increase food insecurity and hunger in America. I think it is important for this committee not just to move on. I think it's important for people to demand answers and to try to find solutions about what we're going to do when people lose their benefits. And again, working people who are on the benefit right now, you can't make ends meet. And single mothers and grandmothers, we heard the testimony. It's heartbreaking. If you've ever met a hungry child in this country, it breaks your heart. And I worry very much that as a result of what this Congress has done, what Republicans and Donald Trump have done, we are going to see a huge spike. It is unacceptable. We cannot have business as usual. We ought to be doing hearings on that, and we ought to be figuring out a way to fix reconciliation. It was rushed through. There's new policy that we had no hearings on. We need to do better, and I urge my colleagues, again, to prioritize the issue of hunger and food insecurity, which is getting worse. I yield back.
Today, we're reacting to Representative McGovern's recent statements during congressional hearing. And folks, what I heard here perfectly encapsulates everything that's wrong with the Democrat approach to governing. Let me break this down for you. First, let's talk about McGovern's complaints about pesticide policy. He's upset that Republicans want to reduce regulations on farmers and agricultural businesses. But here's what he's missing. Our farmers are the backbone of America. They feed this nation and much of the world. When we pile excessive regulations on them, we're making it harder for them to do their jobs effectively and compete globally. McGovern mentions that 1/3 of pesticides used in the U.S. are banned in other countries. What he doesn't mention is that American agriculture is the most productive and efficient in the world precisely because we trust our farmers and our scientists. The EPA already has rigorous testing procedures for pesticides. We don't need to copy the failed policies of countries that can't even feed themselves without importing American crops. The real issue here is that Democrats want to control every aspect of American life, including how our farmers protect their crops. They'd rather see food prices skyrocket and agricultural productivity plummet than trust American innovation and expertise. Now let's address the elephant in the room. McGovern's dramatic comments about SNAP benefits and what he calls the big ugly bill. This is classic Democrat fear-mongering designed to scare vulnerable Americans into thinking Republicans hate the poor. That's simply not true. What Republicans understand is that government dependency is not compassion. It's a trap that keeps people from achieving their full potential. When McGovern talks about SNAP benefits being only $2 per person per meal, he's ignoring the fact that SNAP was always meant to supplement food budgets, not replace personal responsibility and work. The changes Republicans have made to SNAP focus on work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents. This isn't cruel, it's common sense. We should be helping people get jobs and become self-sufficient, not creating permanent government dependency. Work gives people dignity, purpose, and the ability to provide for their families without relying on taxpayers. McGovern's emotional appeals about hungry children are designed to shut down rational debate. Of course, nobody wants children to go hungry, but the best way to ensure children are fed is to help their parents find good-paying jobs. That happens through pro-business policies, reduced regulations, and economic growth. Exactly what Republican policies deliver. Look at the Trump years. We had record low unemployment across all demographics. When people have jobs, they don't need government handouts. When the economy is strong, families thrive. That's the Republican formula for success. What's particularly troubling is McGovern's suggestion that this hearing on pesticides is somehow a cover-up. This is the same tired playbook Democrats use. When they can't win on the merits of their arguments, they claim conspiracy and cover-up. It's intellectually dishonest and shows they have no real solutions. The truth is that Republicans are trying to find practical solutions that help both farmers and consumers. We want safe food at affordable prices, and we want our agricultural sector to remain competitive globally. That requires sensible regulation, not the regulatory stranglehold Democrats prefer. McGovern also complains about the process, claiming things were rushed through without proper hearings. But where was this concern when Democrats were ramming through massive spending bills and healthcare overhauls? The hypocrisy is stunning. Here's what really bothers me about McGovern's approach. He's more interested in expanding government programs than addressing root causes of problems. Instead of asking why food insecurity exists despite decades of government programs, he wants to throw more taxpayer money at the problem. Real conservatives understand that the best social program is a job. The best way to end food insecurity is through economic policies that create opportunities for Americans to earn good wages and support their families with dignity. The state officials McGovern mentions who are worried about additional burdens should ask themselves why their states have become so dependent on federal programs in the first place. Maybe it's time to focus on economic development, job creation, and reducing the regulatory barriers that prevent businesses from thriving. McGovern talks about grandmothers and single parents who think Washington doesn't care. He's right that Washington often doesn't care, but not for the reasons he thinks. Washington doesn't care when it creates policies that trap people in poverty. Washington doesn't care when it makes it harder for businesses to create jobs. Washington doesn't care when it prioritizes political virtue, signaling over actual results. The Republican approach is different. We care enough to expect more from people. We care enough to create conditions where families can succeed without government help. We care enough to preserve the dignity of work and self-reliance that built this great nation. Let me be clear about something else. McGovern's characterization of corporate liability shields is misleading. What Republicans support is preventing frivolous lawsuits that drive up costs for everyone. When trial lawyers can sue farmers and agricultural companies over every minor issue, those costs get passed on to consumers in the form of higher food prices. We need a legal system that holds people accountable for real harm while protecting productive businesses from predatory litigation. That's not about helping billionaire corporations. It's about keeping food affordable for working families. The bottom line is this: McGovern's speech represents everything wrong with the modern Democrat Party. They're more interested in expanding government control and creating dependency than in solving actual problems. They use emotional manipulation instead of facts and logic. They demonize anyone who disagrees with their big government agenda. Real patriots understand that America became great through individual initiative, free enterprise, and limited government. We didn't become the world's agricultural superpower by copying failed European policies. We didn't lift millions out of poverty through welfare expansion. We did it through economic growth and opportunity. That's what's at stake in these policy debates. Do we want an America where government controls more and more of our lives? Or do we want an America where free people make free choices in free markets? Do we want to trust American farmers and innovators? Or do we want to copy the failed policies of countries that can't compete with us? The choice is clear, and that's why we have to stay engaged in these fights. The Democrats want to fundamentally transform America into something our founders wouldn't recognize. We can't let that happen. That's why channels like America First exist, to give you the truth and the conservative perspective that mainstream media ignores. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in Congress, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed for more content like this. Share this video with your friends and family who need to hear the truth. America first. Always. We'll see you in the next video.